Over the past few months we have dealt with new bee colonies, we've made pigeon sausages, we have had a glut of rhubarb, we've had all sorts of visits to fairs and festivals. So welcome to Self-Sufficient in Suburbia for summer 2017. And I forgot to mention, we sent some lambs to slaughter as well. These are the chicks and ducklings that we hatched a few weeks ago now, and they have outgrown their brooder box here and they are now big enough to go over to the Winnies to join the flocks of ducks and hens that we've got there. What we'll do is we'll move them over this evening at the lock-up time, and we'll put them straight in the hen house there, and they'll get used to being in there overnight, and in the morning they'll leave the hen house with the other hens and ducks. This is our hen house in true allotment style. It's built from old doors and we use pallets as gates, and we'll be putting the two ducklings and the chicks into there, and that'll be their new home. Well, one last job to do before we put them into the hen house is to ring them, ring their legs, and we put a leg ring like that onto them, and each year we have a different colour so that we can always work out which year they were hatched. And this year we've opted for this gorgeous lime green colour, and they're not the easiest of things to get on, but once they're on they can then go in to the hen house. It's now the morning after the ducklings and chicks were moved into the hen house here, and as you can see they are up and about but not actually leaving the hen house itself, and I can't really blame them for that because there's other hens in here as well, and the reason being that outside it's rather wet. We've had our first rain in a couple of weeks. Well, it appears the two ducklings have now left the hen house, and they're quite happy with the rain. The adult ones, adult ducks down there. A friend of mine keeps sheep, and she has a few lambs that need to go to slaughter, but she didn't have the vehicle to get them there to the slaughterhouse, so she's made an offer to me, which is that I can have a lamb ready slaughtered if I can take all her lambs to slaughter. Well, it sounded too good a deal to miss out on, so we've been up today having a merry chase around the field to get the lambs into the stable here, and we've used my Land Rover to be able to get them into the stable, and tomorrow they will go for slaughter.
Yeah.
3, 2, 1, and...
3, 2, 1, and...
And nothing happens. Come on boys. Okay, next one, come on. Yeah, come on, that's it, come on. You got the idea. There you go. Easy peasy. Hurrah. Job done. So they'll stay in here overnight, and early tomorrow morning they are lambs to the slaughter. One of the things I like to do in my drive to be self-sufficient is to check out local markets, but also local festivals where craft work is taking place, and see if there's any new skills that I can learn. So today we've come to Chopwell Woods for the Land of Oak and Iron Wood Fest, and I've been having a look at some of the woodworking skills that I could potentially learn for the future.
Willow, that we use willow. Yeah.
Right.
Don't want to come across with a hide.
You've got nowhere to go because I'm not letting it go out, so it's got to go up.
Excellent. You got another tool. So hold on. You're natural. You're gonna be baked.
That's it.
Keep.
It's fine, just
Set anyway.
but that wax is still burning a little. Well, no.
So like 2,000 eggs a day. That's how much it lays.
We have lots and lots of quail. This is one of the ones that was hatched early this year, and they produced huge quantities of quail eggs. And what we're going to do today is use them to make a quail egg salad, and every single ingredient has to come from the garden or from the allotment. Here we have some mange too. So these are very sweet, but they'll be a good addition to our quail egg salad. We didn't get round to picking these lettuces in time, so they've bolted, bizarrely like mini conifer trees. But the leaves are still usable, so we'll be picking one of these to go into the salad. Recognise this? It's horseradish. Now, we normally use the roots, but the leaves have quite a kick to them. So we're going to pick one of these, just one of them, and that'll be chopped up for the salad as well. These tiny tomatoes are a variety called red currant, which were grown in this hanging basket, which is sitting on our rarely used wheelie bin at the moment. But we've picked some of these, and they're going to go into the salad as well. These are nasturtiums. Most people grow them because they've got rather attractive flowers, but we're growing them in pots at the front of our house as a food, and the leaves and flowers are edible, but what we are particularly after are these, which are the seeds, which have a lovely peppery flavour. So I'm going to put a handful of these into the salad as well. The final addition was a pigeon meatloaf I made a few days ago from pigeons that we got in a food swap. Franco's shoots lots of pigeons, gives them to us, we give them lots of jam. So here goes. All fresh from the garden, apart from the eggs. Relatively fresh from the quail house. Well, it's the morning after the night before. We are now loading up the lambs to take them off to the abattoir. We've now arrived at the slaughterhouse, so it's time to wave goodbye to our passengers. One of the foods we have in excessive quantities is pigeon breasts, and David is stripping them from the birds at the moment, and shortly I'll be using those breasts to make pigeon burgers. After we finished taking the breasts off the pigeons, we put them through the mincing machine and minced the whole lot of them up, and we've got 500 grams there. And what we're going to do is make burgers with them. Now they're going to taste very gamey, so I'm going to show you some of the ingredients that we add in to sort of take the edge off the gamey taste. But whenever you make burgers, you need to add in breadcrumbs, and that helps retain the moisture when they're being cooked. So we've got 100 grams to add to the 500 grams, 100 grams of breadcrumbs to add to the 500 grams of minced pigeon breast. Now here are some of the other interesting ingredients to add in. This is bitter, it's homemade. We made a big barrel of bitter earlier this year and we're desperate to use this stuff up, so we're looking for all sorts of ways to use it, so that's going in as well. So effectively an amount to taste. And we just picked up some apples from a friend's allotment yesterday, so we're going to add in a couple of these, peeled and cored and then grated as well. And likewise a medium-sized onion, peeled and grated as well. Now this is fruit puree. It's from a byproduct of ours when we make hedgerow jelly, and it's got about 6 or 7 different hedgerow fruits such as rose hips, haw-berries, blackberries and so on have gone into it, and we make a jelly from that, and the pulp that's left over we put through a sieve and we get a fruit puree from it. So we're going to put in 2 or 3 tablespoons of that. And to give it a sort of slightly sweet edge, this is actually some of the hedgerow jelly that we made, that resulted in that pulp as well. And we're going to add in about 2/3 of that jar as well, again depending on taste, so just give it a sort of slightly sweet edge as well. But as you can see, it didn't really set very well, so we've been looking for all sorts of ways to use that up. And finally, in terms of the ingredients, just a spot of salt and ground black pepper. So all of that now goes into a mixing bowl, and then give this all a good stir. There it is, all mixed up. Now I reckon that this is a little bit too moist, so I'm going to add in a few more breadcrumbs to absorb some of that moisture, and then I'm going to make a couple of mini burgers, and we're going to test them out to make sure that the ingredients are all nicely balanced together. The interesting thing about the ingredients for these burgers is that most of the ingredients are from waste. The pigeons, for example, are shot because they are a pest. The breadcrumbs are made from leftover dried bread. The fruit puree that went into it was made from the waste of a jam making process. The sweet jelly that went in was one that hadn't worked and we were looking for a new use for it. So it's a good way of actually using up lots of waste that would otherwise be thrown out. Anyway, here are my two mini burgers. This is the moment of truth time. So here goes. Yeah, they're not bad. It takes a moment for the taste to actually hit you. Yeah. I think I need a barbecue. I'm back here in the hop garden in High Spen. It's about 3 or 4 kilometres from where we live, and it's a community run allotment and people can come in and take part in a bit of gardening. But the reason I'm here today is because they have surplus apples, and I have a huge surplus of quail eggs, so we're doing a bit of swapping. These are the apples that I've traded for, and it's a variety called Beauty of Bath. And to pay for it, this is the money, and it's a load of quail eggs, of which we have quite a surplus, and a little bit of rhubarb that I picked up from the allotment this morning. We got these 2 trout in a food swap last year, and they've been in the freezer ever since then, and we decided it was time to use them up. So we baked both of them, and we ate half of one of them, and what's left over is going to be used to make fish pie. The first job to do is to separate the flesh from the bones and the heads. So 1 bowl of the flesh and 1 bowl of the scraps, so it's skins, bones, heads and so on. And that is what we're going to be using next to make the fish stock. Into your pan put the fish bits, and then add in a couple of chopped onions and a few bay leaves, and then a couple of litres of water. In this pan I've got some water that I boiled some potatoes in. No need to waste that water, that can be added to the stock as well. Well, the stock's been simmering for about an hour now, so it's now time to strain it. So for the pie filling we've got our trout. We also have anchovies in oil. Now this is the only thing that we've actually bought to go in this pie. In fact, we didn't actually buy them for the pie. We've had them in the fridge for ages and we're desperate to get them used up. And we're also adding in some peas straight from the garden, freshly picked. I got them just before it got completely dark outside a few minutes ago. And we've got a couple of small onions chopped, and also part of our summer glut we've got a load of quail eggs which we really need to use up. Next job is to make the white sauce, so you will need half a litre of the fish stock we've just made, half a litre of full cream milk, This is ricotta cheese. It's part of our glut, but a glut from last year. We made it from our goat's milk last year. We've got loads of it still in the freezer and we need to get it used up, so 2 heaped teaspoonfuls of this and plain flour, a heaped tablespoonful. Mix it all up, ready to go into the pie. Once you've thoroughly mixed it up, pour it over, and if you don't think it's thick enough, just bung in a bit more flour. For the topping you will need mashed potato. We've added into this some of our ricotta cheese to try and use up that cheese mountain. This now goes onto the pie. Well, it's been in the oven for about 45 to 50 minutes. So that's now ready to be eaten. We had loads of the white sauce left over that didn't go into the pie, so we just put that into the leftover fish stock as well, and we'll use it to make fish soup at some point in the future. Anyway, here goes for my dinner tonight. A few days ago, a friend of mine who has an allotment got in touch with me and said, come on down and swap for some of the rhubarb he had growing. It turned up, didn't quite expect 23 kilos of this stuff. Now that doesn't include the two big bags of rhubarb that I then gave away to other people as well. And on the allotment we have a load of rhubarb. That's our own allotment. We have a load of rhubarb growing. So we've got 23 bags of this, 1 kilo per bag, which all has to go into the freezer. The problem is we're now running out of freezer space. We're on our Marley Hill allotment. This is the smallest of the 3 allotments that we have, and this is the one where we concentrate mainly on growing vegetables. So we'll give you a quick run through of what we got here, starting with celery. We've never successfully grown celery before, but it seems to be coming along quite well. And then at the top we have some lettuces growing. And then, moving over to the next row, we have parsnips. One of my favourite vegetables. I love them roasted. And then we have cabbages and onions, then more red cabbages, and then we have Swedes and kale, and you'll probably not be able to make them out, but the final row is meant to be carrots, and there ain't many in there. We've never succeeded in growing carrots, and this year looks like it's not going to be any different. We've got some lovely horseradish here, lovely leaves on it as well, so we don't just use the root but we use the leaves as well. And then next to it we have mint, which is literally taken over this central section here between the beds, and also here are blackcurrants, which are about to be picked, and I'll be making blackcurrant jam this week. On this bed we need to do some weeding, but you can see more parsnips, and then peas, rather hidden under some of the weeds there. But we have broad beans, and as you can see they are ready for picking as well. So lots of beans, and then on this bed David is valiantly picking lots of weeds, and we have a few more cabbages here as well. Actually, David's not valiantly picking any weeds. Oh yes, he started again. Well done. Over the winter we lost all our bees. Rather embarrassing for us, but our final 5 colonies died out. So in the spring we set about finding somebody who was able to sell us bees, and we found somebody in Northumberland who was happy to sell us 2 hives. By the time we went to pick up the hives from them, they had become 3 hives, because they decided to split one of the colonies, which was very large. And then we installed the 3 hives that we have here, and on the day that we installed them they became 4 because one of the hives decided to swarm. So I captured the swarm and rehoused it in a spare hive, of which I have a reasonable number, and that hive, that swarm hive, is now doing rather well, and we would expect next year to be getting honey off this hive. But that wasn't the end of the story, because we then found somebody else who had a couple of colonies for sale. So we bought them and then rehoused them in yet more spare hives, and they are now doing rather well, and again we're expecting lots of honey off these 2 hives next year. I've got to say though that it was quite a hellish experience rehousing those 2 colonies, because the beekeeper we were buying them from wanted the hives back. So we had to take all the frames out with the bees in, and this was about 10:30 at night in the dark, rehouse the bees by putting the frames into our own hives. And of course the bees did not like that at all, and we both came out covered in bee stings. I think I must have had about 40 or 50 bee stings, and a very, very temporary histamine reaction to them as well. But fortunately we recovered to tell the tale. But we now have 6 hives, all in good order, all in good shape, and that means, fingers crossed, a good deal of honey next year. The lamb arrived back from the abattoir a couple of days ago, and tonight we have decided to have one of the joints roasted, so here goes. Superb. I've just arrived at the Comfrey Project in Bensham in Gateshead. Now this is a project that is aiming to help local residents on low incomes and also refugee families with getting access to good healthy food. And the reason why I've come along here is because I've got a whole surplus of apples and plums and runner beans and rhubarb that other people have given me as part of food swaps, but which I have too much of now, and it can be put to good use here at the project. So we've got a good sized bag of rhubarb, We've got runner beans, great bag of them, plums and apples, and these plums and apples would have ended up in the waste stream if we hadn't taken them for use, and more plums there, so these will now be used rather than put into the rubbish. The idea is that people can take whatever they need and make a donation. Anything that's left over will go into the cafe, the community cafe that's here later in the week. We've got our pea crop in from the allotment and we've shelled the peas and they've been frozen, so we're left with a load of the shells like that, and we're not going to waste them. They're going to be turned into stock to make pea soup. And what we're also going to put into that stock are some manky old onions which desperately needed to be used up. Making stock is a good way of getting rid of lots of old vegetables that otherwise would go to waste. And we're also going to stick in a load of dried herbs from last year. We've got our new herb crops coming in, and these old dried ones just need to be used up, they're in the way. And recently we chopped back our bay tree and got loads and loads of bay leaves. We are drowning in the things, so we're putting a load of them into a big pan which we'll cover with water, bring to the boil and leave to simmer for an hour. The pea pods were simmered for about an hour, and then I took the heat off the pan and I just left it to stand overnight. So I'm going to strain it all off right now. Now that the stock's made, the next job to do is to chop a couple of onions and then lightly fry them. While the onions are frying, chop 3 or 4 medium-sized potatoes. I wasn't planning to add tomatoes to this recipe, but when I checked in my fridge a few minutes ago, I found some tomatoes that we picked from our polytunnel a few days ago, and they weren't going to last much longer, so if we didn't use them now they'd be wasted. So since I hate waste, these are going in the soup as well. And another ingredient, some fresh mint, just picked from our herb garden, about 4 sprigs of it. The onions are nicely browned now, so I'm going to add these to the pan with the stock, and then I'm going to add in the other ingredients. Put the stock onto the heat, and the other ingredients are half a kilo of peas, the tomatoes and the potato and mint, and we'll bring that up to the boil. Well, the soup's come up to the boil now, and I'm going to test it because I think this is the point where I add some stock powder to it, just to give it a slightly savoury edge to it. So I'm going to put in a couple of heaped teaspoonfuls and then leave it to simmer for half an hour. Well, the soup's been simmering away for about half an hour, so we're just going to test it now. Yep, that's fine. So that's ready to be served. Well, that's not too bad. And the great thing is that we were able to give a second life to the pea pods, which would otherwise have been put into the compost bin. So we made soup from them instead of compost. It's Monday the 28th of August 2017. It's actually bank holiday, the August bank holiday, and as we normally do, we've come up to Wooler to go to the Glendale Agricultural Show.
Yes, you do. Yeah.
I think the first point of call, personal service personnel who need support me. Examples of work, like small, identify
Oh, no then. Oh, I've heard a bit about you.
That's Ruby.
Yeah. Right. It's so much they've grown from, I know. Good. Thank.
So that's it for this edition of Self-Sufficient in Suburbia, and we're going to play you out with pictures of some of the jams that we've been making over the summer.